All right, preparing to live stream. Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. I think there's another button I have to click once we're there.
Just tell me when to go.
All right. And I think we are live.
All right. Welcome to On the FinSide here. We thank all of our listeners and watchers who have been with us here for the last couple of years. And we're trying a little something different. It might be a complete train wreck, but we're going to go with it anyway. I'm Brian Catanzaro, and on the other side is Paul Pickin. You can follow us on our various social media outlets there on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio. And be sure to leave us some comments and let us know what you're thinking. You know, we've got the NFL draft just a few days away. We've done a lot of positional breakdowns, and we've set our big boards, and that information is going to be coming out here in the next few days. But what we're doing here is a 7-round mock draft that we've taken in a couple of different directions now. So the Dolphins have 14 picks in the NFL draft, obviously. They've got 3 first-rounders at 5, 18, and 26. In the second round, they have the 39th pick. Third round, they have the 70th. Fourth round, they have 141. They also have 3 fifth-rounders, a 6th-rounder, and a 7th-round, and 3 7th-rounders. So we're going to be quite active here on the FinSide, breaking down pick by pick after they happen. But now we're going to try to predict those picks, and we took it in 2 different directions. Here we're allowed 2 trades. So I did throughout this 7-round mock 2 trade ups. Paul did 2 trade downs to acquire an absolute insane amount of picks. So you might as well get cozy and because overall we're going to be talking about 30 different picks. So Paul, I'm going to throw it to you first there. I mean, you know what position I'm going to go for here, but a punter's in there. Don't worry about that. In fact, I had to resist the urge to draft 2 punters, but they're in the first pick of the draft. Did you didn't make you didn't make a trade up or trade down there at 5, and I would imagine you didn't go quarterback either.
I did not trade up. I did not trade down. I went ahead and I did what I told you I was going to do. I took a tackle. Jedrick Wills out of Alabama went to the Dolphins at 5. I know there's a lot of Tua fans. I know there's a lot of Herbert fans. They were both on the board. I passed. I have my concerns about each.
Yeah, I'm sticking with what I've said all along here. I'm going with Tua. I'm not buying any of the BS here about what I perceive to be BS, at least about Justin Herbert. You know, it just seems to me that as soon as the news was getting more and more positive on Tua Tagovailoa, that the Dolphins' interest seemed to wane, and I never quite bought that. I think it was really a means for the Dolphins to take Tua at 5 without convincing anybody that they were moving up to 3. Because if you move from 5 to 3, you're probably going to give up one of those first-round picks. The big question I ask during this Tua and Herbert debate is, do you find it more likely that Tua is going to stay healthy, or that Justin Herbert is suddenly going to show himself as an instinctive, accurate quarterback that, to me, he's never shown himself to be? Yeah, he had a 66% completion percentage, but also threw a lot of screen passes. And if you look at the big games, not accurate from down to down as far as putting the ball on the right shoulder. Too many throws high, too many throws low. I think with all these draft picks in the next 2 years, Tua is worth the risk, and I think the Dolphins have felt that way all along. Paul, so at number 18, you know, interesting. You have Jedrick Wills at number 5 there. I traded up here, and I traded up from 18 to 13 with the 49ers. And What I gave up is the 56th pick in the draft, the second rounder, to move up to that spot, because I really think that once you get within 5 to 7 picks of the Dolphins, with that 18th pick, they're going to start getting on the phone trying to get that offensive tackle. And Jedrick Wills is the guy. He's a great athlete, a very good technician at 6'4", 312 pounds, somebody who could go as high as 4 to the Giants. You had him going 5 to the Dolphins. But to me, if the Dolphins could come out of the first 2 picks with a quarterback and with an offensive tackle, I already grade that position at least a B plus or an A. So where did you go from here after going with the tackle first?
So I played the board how it came to me, and I agree with you. There are a lot of questions with Tua on the injuries. There's a lot of questions ceiling and floor wise when it comes to Justin Herbert, as well as there are a lot of questions with the floor and the ceiling when it comes to Jordan Love, who on a lot of boards is anywhere from the second to the fourth quarterback prospect. I went ahead and took Jordan Love at number 18. He was still on the board. And I think given the fact that he's got a low floor, but he also has a high ceiling, he can come in, compete with Josh Rosen, who I'm not convinced the Dolphins are no longer high on, to be that eventual replacement for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick keeps the seat warm again this year, but one of the two could unseat him as we move forward throughout the season, depending on if the old Fitzpatrick shows up or not.
And at 26, I went with Ezra Cleveland, the tackle from Boise State. He's a player I've liked a whole lot all along. And this is, to me, where the Dolphins would be knocking the draft out of the park. If you get the quarterback at 5, you get the offensive tackle and a trade up without sacrificing a lot of resources. And then at 26, you come away with Ezra Cleveland. Now your offensive line from left to right is Ezra, Eric Flowers, Ted Karras, Jesse Davis, and Jedrick Wills in this scenario. So I really like that right there, especially the value. If he or Josh Jones fall to 26, that becomes a very big exclamation point on this first round for the Dolphins.
So for me here, I completely planned on making a pick at 26. I actually tried to make some trades from both the 5th and the 18th spot that I just couldn't get anybody to bite on. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, Dolphins roll up with the 26th pick. And I had a trade pop up on my screen from the Seattle Seahawks, who apparently love Christian Fulton so much that they wanted to give up the farm to come get him. I added a 2nd round pick next year for it. I added picks in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th round to give up the 26th pick. And anybody that's listened to the show knows that I'm a big fan of a lot of the talent that's going to go off the board between our 3rd round pick at the beginning of the 3rd round and our 4th round pick at the end of the 4th round. So I looked at this. I looked at the fact that adding that 2nd round pick gives a little bit of ammo next year if Rosen and Love don't work out, to move up the board and go after one of the quarterbacks in next year's draft class. So adding that pick made a ton of sense for me, as well as just starting to increase the ridiculous number of picks that Greer has and taking it to an all new level.
So if I understand correctly, that the next pick here is going to be in the 2nd round.
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say, because the Seahawks pick 27. So if you move down one spot to get all that, then we're just going to cancel the rest of the mock draft, because that's a glitch in the system.
No. Oh God, no. I would have loved to, but I couldn't in good conscience. I mean, it's just like and that's one of the things actually I really want to say here quick before we move on from this is one of the things that Kat and I both have done all along throughout this process when we've done our mock drafts, whether they're on the air or off the air, we have a tendency, if somebody stupid slides to a position, we don't take the guy. We pretend that he came off the board already. We try to keep at least a reliable amount of realism in these mock drafts when we do them, so that once you start taking, you know, J.K. Dobbins in the 4th round because he happens to slide on the draft board or whatever, your draft no longer has credibility. And so we tried to stick to a realm of realism with this. So anyway, back to you, Kat.
Absolutely. And so going on, Paul's going to have a lot more picks here that he's going to run through as we get a little bit later. I was, big on trading up throughout this draft here. I didn't in this next situation. So right now I've got Tua and both of the offensive tackles in Jedrick Wills and Ezra Cleveland. And now going down to 39, that's where J.K. Dobbins comes off the board. The Dolphins have shown a lot of interest in him. He had a great season last year, running for over 1,900 yards at Ohio State against very good competition. But if we had to guess on one player that after the first round I was confident was going to be a Dolphin, it would be J.K. Dobbins, because the Dolphins, even though they signed Jordan Howard, I don't see him being that bell cow. And J.K. Dobbins, outstanding in pass protection, one of the best hands in the draft as far as running back. I think you get him, and now you've got 4 offensive players there with your first 4 picks.
Yeah, and for me here, the first pick of the 2nd round, I wound up, and you'll appreciate this, both Ezra Cleveland and J.K. Dobbins came off the board the 2 picks before I picked here in the 2nd round.
Mm-hmm.
So I cried a little bit. But there was another big boy along the offensive line for the rebuild project that was still sitting there, and that was Lloyd Cushenberry. And you and I have talked at length about Cushenberry throughout the entire process. I mean, you couldn't watch Joe Burrow this season without keeping an eye on him as well. So, I mean, most of our fans and listeners and Dolphins fans out there know what Cushenberry is capable of. And this kicks Ted Karras over to guard, which Karras is good at either guard or center. And suddenly you now have an offensive line left to right, Jedrick Wills, Eric Flowers, Lloyd Cushenberry, Ted Karras, and, well, Jesse Davis at right tackle. After my first pick of the 2nd round anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you do the rest of it right, Jesse Davis at right tackle, it's not something we want, but we're also in a division here with the Bills, Patriots, and Jets where there's not a lot of big edge speedy pass rushers either. So that's something that could work, but ideally we'd like to see Jesse Davis as a right guard or as a backup. So my next pick, because I did trade the 56th pick to move up from 18 to 13 for Jedrick Wills, my next pick is not until the 3rd round. So Paul, I'm going to throw it back to you and see how the rest of you, I believe you've got 2 more 2nd round picks for that.
Do.
So who'd you come away with the rest of the guys?
So with our original pick 56, I walked away at the safety position. I hate the fact that folks have caught on to this guy. I've been a huge fan of him throughout the whole process. He did great at the Senior Bowl, and that's Jeremy Chin out of Southern Illinois, the safety. He comes in, steps in, day 1 starter back there with Eric Rowe and with Bobby McCain as it stands right now. And suddenly your safety position is answered. You've got your boundary guys. You have one of the best secondaries in the NFL once you've added Chin to this mix. And then at pick 64 from the Seahawks, I addressed the Jesse Davis issue at right tackle. Lucas Niang, TCU, we've spent so much time talking about him. We've grabbed him in other mock drafts. Now we have a completely rebuilt and every position has been improved offensive line to deal with here. Moving into the season, whether it's Josh Rosen or Jordan Love on my board, if it was Tua from yours, we've addressed the offensive line here, and it is solid beyond belief.
So in that situation, it looks like Jedrick Wills would be your left tackle. And Lucas Niang would be right tackle. Lloyd Cushenberry could either play. I mean, he could play center. He could play guard too. I mean, he's got the length for both of those spots. So I went, so we've each got our 70th overall pick, and I went with a Utah safety, Terrell Burgess, a player I'm really confident that the Dolphins are going to be looking at. You know, 5'11", 202 pounds, has a high football IQ, and played in a lot of big games there at Utah. So whether you're lining him up day one at free safety, or whether you're keeping Bobby McCain back there and having him play down at the nickel spot, he gives you a lot of different flexibility options. And one thing, Jeremy Chin, one thing I'll disagree with you on is I don't know if he would be a day one starter. I think he'd be more of a project, instead of being that deep half type of guy. Or maybe he could start carving out a role as a strong safety slash linebacker. But Burgess is somebody I think that Flores would like a whole heck of a lot to step in there immediately. Josh Boyer too.
And Burgess is a guy that I like. I will give you that. For me, my first pick of the third round, again, I got offered a trade that I really liked to add picks in that no man's land that we currently had, that I've already filled up a little bit. So I'm going to have a lot of picks here across the third and fourth round, which I am completely happy with. A lot of our regular listeners know I'm a huge fan of a lot of talent that comes in this third and fourth round here. This is a really cool draft for rebuilding the Dolphins. So I went ahead, took an offer from the Buccaneers, gave them pick 6 to slide back to pick 12 in the third round, and I also added a fourth round pick in pick 11. So for me here, my first pick of the third round doesn't come until pick 76, or the 12th pick, and I took somebody that the Dolphins have been very heavily linked to here going into the draft, and that's defensive lineman Raekwon Davis out of Alabama. Miami's got a need for another big body along that defensive line, and Raekwon Davis can step in day one, join that rotation, and be part of it as we go into the 2020 season, ready to make a playoff push the way that this roster is shaping up.
And who else did you go with in the third round with your other pick?
With my other pick, I went with KJ Hill, the wide receiver. I think he's got a shot to crack the lineup. I think he's got an uphill battle given the receivers we have on the roster, but there was enough talent there. He exhibited enough talent at the Senior Bowl. He was a very polished route runner, and given the injuries, he's kind of an insurance pick here in that late third round.
So now we go down to day 3 of the draft, and Paul has definitely stockpiled himself here, as we've gone along with these trades. In the fourth round, my first guy was at pick 141. We get down to the end of that round. Somebody I think the Dolphins are going to look at a lot, and that's Harrison Hand, the cornerback from Temple. I see him as somebody that, even though he lined up at cornerback at Temple, can move inside to the safety position. And he offers, like Burgess, a lot of that flexibility. Runs a 4.42, but doesn't quite play to that speed. But if you watch him on tape, plays with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, just might be a step slow and a little bit hippie to be that type of cornerback. So I see him moving inside to safety, playing a little bit of nickel. But either way, now you've really stockpiled yourself with Burgess and with Harrison Hand to fill out those 5th, 6th, and 7th defensive back units. And then with one pick later, I saw somebody on the board I really like, so I used my second trade up. I moved up to pick 142 right after the Dolphins. I gave up a 6th and a 7th rounder as compensation, and came away with SMU's James Prochet. He's somebody that went to Senior Bowl week, showed a lot of separation ability, kind of like how Terry McLaurin did the year before that at the Senior Bowl. So he's somebody that, with Prochet, with Alan Hearns on the roster, with Jakeem Grant on the roster, maybe you take a look at cutting Albert Wilson and saving $9.5 million.
It's possible. I mean, for me, I'm going to be talking a little bit here. And by the way, before we move on, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's watching right now. We're already getting some great feedback, Kat, just so you know. Lots of people want to see more of these coming, which I'm great with. they thought we sounded older than we actually are, apparently.
Ah,
Which I know I've got you with this white beard here, but no, it's I'm glad to see great feedback on this, and I'm actually having a lot of fun with this thus far. I don't know about you, Kat, but I'm actually enjoying doing it this way a little bit.
I am too. I mean, other than seeing your stupid face, I think I'm good with doing this a little bit more. I'm just kidding. God,
I'm blowing kisses at you off camera. Don't you worry.
lighten up, everyone. No, it's good to put a face with a name for some people that really haven't seen us before. So we appreciate it. Got the On the FinSide apparel right here. You can go to onthefinside.threadless.com. Also got the draft day hat that you see online. I highly recommend that too. So I got Harrison Hand there in the fourth round. James Prochet as well. And so if I understand, you've got 3 4th-round picks here, correct?
I have 4 fourth-round picks
Jesus.
here. All right. So I've got pick 11, pick 27, pick 35, and pick 38 of the 4th round after numerous, read it 2 trade downs here. So first one that I have here, round 4, pick 11, pick 117 overall, a guy I was stealing much later on in a lot of drafts, but wound up having to jump up and grab here. I got the wrecking ball that can run around you, the poor man's Derrick Henry, who happens to be from New London, Connecticut, a couple towns over from me. And that is A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. You pair him with Jordan Howard behind this remade offensive line, there is good Lord, we've got guys on the offensive line now that can smack you. And then you've got this wrecking ball coming out of the backfield to run you over in A.J. Dillon. And what an A.J. Dillon fan I am. And the fact that I can put him behind this reworked offensive line. I know I said on another show that we have that anybody behind this offensive line is going to look like Barry Sanders after what we dealt with last year. He's not going to look like Barry Sanders. He's not that scat, but he can make guys look stupid. My next pick's a guy that, Kat, I'm a huge fan of, and he's going to come in and fill that nickel role in my remade secondary, and that is Amik Robertson. He's tiny, but he plays with a huge chip on his shoulder, hits like a truck, and having him out there in nickel and dime situations and with the calculated risks he takes, he's going to add an element to this Dolphins secondary in the slot that we're missing right now, even with the talent we have out there. Pick 35, Miami still needs some help off the edge on their defense. We've done a lot of offensive stuff outside of Raekwon Davis and Jeremy Chin thus far. We've got to get back over the defensive side of the ball and help out a little bit. In that vein, I added Kenny Willekes out of Michigan State to come off the edge of that defense, terrorize some of these very, very young quarterbacks around the division in the AFC East, in Sam Darnold, in Knucklehead in Buffalo, and I guess Jarrett Stidham in New England, because that's all that's left. So you start adding a pass rush with this nightmare of a secondary, and you're going to have a really, really good time with this defense, and Brian Flores is going to have a really good time with this defense. After that, I know I've reworked the starters along the offensive line. I thought it was time to add a little bit of depth for when Eric Flowers moves on, grab a project player. I went ahead and I grabbed Michael Onwenu out of Michigan. I think he's somebody that needs a little time to develop, but he's good in that phone booth. And I went ahead and added him to the depth because, let's face it, at the end of the day, I've got 19 draft picks. I can add a couple projects at the guard position.
Yeah, 19 draft picks here, and that's really solid ones there as far as them, because you got A.J. Dillon, who can immediately be your either your first or second running back in this scenario. Amik Robertson is, if you do I don't care what team you are, if you do a mock draft, you're going to have Amik Robertson in there somewhere, somewhere in that 3rd to 4th round area. 14 interceptions in college over the last 3 years. And even though he's 5'8", $187, you take a look at him and you'll see him go one-on-one against Texas's Colin Johnson, who really, I mean, he's 6'6", 210 pounds. So he's shown the ability to do that, but where his future is either at nickelback or at free safety. And Willikis is somebody who also at Michigan State can step on the field pretty quickly too. So anyway, keep going down the list here. We'll go back to me here for the 5th round. And this is where I did it here. I went with the punter.
No.
Braden Mann.
I knew who you were going to say.
Who I think is one of the best punters to come out of the league in a very long time. I mean, you take a look at Matt Hawk and what he's done over the last 2 years. He was 21st in average, 21st in net last year. Braden Mann can immediately flip that field position. And if you're talking about that to upgrade the field position that dramatically, is without question all day worth a 5th round pick. With my other 5th round pick, I went with Baylor nose tackle Bavarian Roy. He's 6'1", 330 pounds, fantastic football player. Did not get invited to the combine, but he went to East West Shrine and had a hell of a week. And when you look at the Dolphins nose tackle position behind Davin Gotcha, some depth is certainly needed at that spot. So he's somebody I think can come in and certainly make the team as a 5th round pick.
You and your damn special teamers.
I should have a long snapper here in the 7th round if you're not careful.
Oh Jesus, I wouldn't put it past you. If you've got a kicker coming up too, I'm just you're gonna see me walk off camera. But no, it's for my 5th round. I've got 3 5th rounders here. I didn't add anything. We're good to go. I actually wound up doubling down on one position. We'll figure out which as we get through it. But my first pick of the 5th round, I went ahead and got the backup for Gesicki. And for me, that's somebody I've talked about at length. Colby Parkinson out of Stanford. I'm a big fan. He's a huge target. It's going to say something when you've got a tight end that towers over the tree trunks we have at wide receiver when you get down in that red zone. And Colby Parkinson uses his body really well to go ahead and box out defenders and use that 6'7" height to go up and high point the ball. So for me here, I had to go Colby Parkinson. And then I went with Cam Brown, linebacker out of Penn State. I know Miami's got a lot of depth at linebacker, but these coaches like guys that can come in, play a role, and be part of special teams. We talked a lot about linebacker on one of our episodes that dropped this morning, and I know we've got another one dropping tomorrow for the off-ball linebackers. But as far as this goes, I think he's a player that can step in. He's got a high ceiling that he could have a chance to impact. But again, 19 draft picks, he's going to have an uphill battle to make this roster. My final 5th round pick, I went back to the tight end well, and I took the easily best blocking tight end in this draft to come in and challenge for an immediate impact role, and that is Thaddeus Moss out of LSU. Miami's got tight ends that can catch, and Thaddeus can make some dynamic catches when he's out there. But the fact that he can come in and pancake some people from that tight end position has a lot of value, especially given this reworked offensive line and when it comes to the running game. So Colby Parkinson, Cam Brown, Thaddeus Moss here in the 5th.
Got it. So looking at the rest of your draft, Paul, how many more draft picks do you have left? I mean,
let's see. We will take a look here. I got to scroll. I've got so many picks.
Yeah.
I got 1, 2, 5. I have 5 picks remaining.
So two sixes and 3 sevens, I believe.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So I traded my 6th round pick and a 7th round pick. So I've just got 2 7th rounders left here, Paul. So you signed up for this yourself. So go ahead and go ahead and go with your 6th round picks that you got.
6th round picks. Anybody that's listened to our Edge show, I've been singing this guy's praises for a little while now. Chauncey Rivers out of Mississippi State does a really good job bending the edge and getting to the quarterback. I want people to come in and push Charles Harris off this roster, possibly Taco Charlton. And so I went back to that edge rusher. Well, I know I got Kenny Willekes earlier. Getting Chauncey Rivers in that mix is going to be something that impacts that pass rush. And given the secondary that we've built with this, it's even better to get guys that can get to the quarterback. So in addition to Chauncey Rivers, I went back to a guy I took on an earlier mock draft. And I took Chris Orr out of Wisconsin, somebody that's flying under a lot of radars here as we go through everything. And he has shown a tremendous burst coming from linebacker to get into that backfield, and he can still drop back in coverage and help you out there too. So really, I'm trying to give Brian Flores weapons to come back at no, we did not take more offensive line, Lincoln, don't you worry. Weapons to get at the quarterback from any angle he chooses and be able to rush that quarterback.
Yeah, I've got to round it out here. I've got picks 246 and 251. See, I went with quality here, not quantity. I'm not looking to acquire 19 different draft picks, so I only had 11. So that's why you've heard Paul do a lot of the talking here. Yeah, but I think you can just looking back at the Dolphins draft in 1997. I mean, you'll see 10 of them that amounted to nothing in the NFL, one of which was Yatil Green for the people that remember. But you also came away with Sam Madison and Jason Taylor, and that's what happens when you get more swings at the plate. So with my final two picks here, one that I think I've had in every mock draft that we've had, and that's Javaris Davis from Auburn, who's the cousin of Avante Davis. And what I appreciate about him is that he was not supposed to be invited to Senior Bowl week. And when he was, he turned out to be one of the best cornerbacks there. And these smaller, fast defensive backs are somebody that's going to get on Brian Flores and Chris Greer's radar very, very quickly. So I think he can come in and compete for a roster spot. And then finally rounding it out, Bryce Huff, the edge rusher out of the University of Memphis, also not invited to the combine, and one of the real true edge players that I have in this draft. I don't think the Dolphins need a lot of those edge or linebacker types, given that they signed Kyle Van Noy and Landon Roberts and Camu Grugier-Hill here in the offseason. But given the upside, I think Huff is worth it here with one of the last picks in the draft. So that's going to round it out there for me, Paul. But you've got, I believe, 3 7th rounders remaining.
I have 3 to go, and they're fun ones. So I went back to that safety well, and I know I took Jeremy Chin, who I think is going to play that strong safety role like you talked about a little bit for the Dolphins here immediately. And another guy that can contribute a lot earlier, possibly in that deep safety role, I went ahead and took J.R. Reed out of Georgia. He slid a little bit, but not outside the realm of possibility. And he's a guy that I've been singing the praises of literally since my first draft or mock draft back in October. He can come in and play that high safety role. He's not the greatest in run support, but he is a guy that would have a role on this team if he shows even a little bit in training camp. My second one here, pick 32 of the 7th round. I went with the big boy. I added another meat monster to the middle of this defensive line, and that is Benito Jones out of Mississippi. He has a chance to possibly make this roster. He might get practice squad, given all these players I've got with 19 draft picks after the 2 trades. But again, and then I added another corner in Parnell Motley, somebody I thought has some high upside, give Flores a chance to work with, see what happens from here. But yeah, it's God, that was a lot of picks, and I've done a lot of talking on these draft picks.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's what happens when we have 19 draft picks, but
it happens.
So if that happens, the Dolphins are going to have about 8 to 9% of the overall draft picks. But hey, look, but what you've shown though too is all you need to do is trade down twice and be willing to hold on to those draft picks.
Well,
I traded up here, so that's
and
why I've got 11.
I will say I also loaded up a little bit for next year as part of this, which a lot of people aren't doing in these mock drafts. But and yes, Rhinos, I did accumulate 19 draft picks via 2 trade downs. The Seahawks made a crazy trade up, and I acquired a second rounder for next year. But I built up a little bit for next year too, so it's really giving Miami that sustainable chance for the future as we go through this year. And I don't know, this was a really fun thing, and I do love what we're getting as far as feedback. I love how many people we've got watching this. This was a fun experiment for me, Kat. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I appreciate everyone's feedback in there too, even the smart ass pieces of feedback. Which don't worry, I'm writing your names down, and we'll get to you at a later time. No, I'm just kidding. We really appreciate everybody that's supporting with us here throughout draft season too. We hope you've gotten a lot out of this. And one thing we're not gonna get on a podcast or a video like this and talk your ear off about what we had for lunch for 3 hours. Some of these I listened to, you know, I'm 20 minutes into it and they haven't brought up one football player yet. Paul and I are big on getting right to the point when we get there. So anything that you want to see as fans do, please let us know about that as well. So everybody enjoy the draft, and you can follow Paul and I on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Check out our merch store on the FinSide.threadless.com. And Solo D's not taking us on or off today because we're doing this on a little bit of a different format, but we appreciate the intro and outros from him as well. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side. Solo D, take us home.